Welcome back to another video. Today is September 23rd, 2024, and today I'm going to talk about the new New York Times and Siena College polls showing Donald Trump ahead in Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. So let's go right into it. The poll results were Trump +5 in Arizona, Trump +4 in Georgia, and Trump +2 in North Carolina. So let's go down here to see how the polls compare to other pollsters and other polls that have been conducted in the same time frame around. Here's this one from Quinnipiac University that showed Harris up in North Carolina and Trump up in Georgia. Emerson College showed Trump up in Arizona and in Georgia, but tied in North Carolina. And CNN SSRS showed Trump up by 5 in Arizona and Kamala Harris up by 1 in Georgia. The other ones they haven't polled. So this is what I find particularly interesting, that before the debate, the New York Times Siena College polls showed Kamala Harris up in Arizona, and now, post-debate, she's down by the exact same margin. And in Georgia, Trump stayed exactly the same. In North Carolina, again, a 5-point swing, not as strong as the swing in Arizona that the New York Times has found, but I'm kind of curious about this. This looks to me like it should not be happening, especially right now, given how the debate went, how many Americans think the debate went in terms of who won, who did better, who looked stronger. All of that obviously plays into who people are going to vote for in November, especially if they're undecided. So for voters to go from Harris +5 to Trump +5, and North Carolina Harris +2 to Trump +3 in a month, that means either something absolutely massive happened in Trump's favor, which did not, or one of the two polls, or both, are off. And let me tell you what I think is happening. So let's go over to first, let's discuss Mark Robinson. I'm sure you all saw the scandal, but these are the polls in that race. Post scandal, there hasn't been much. The New York Times Siena College poll was administered during, before, and after. So a bit of a split there. But they found Josh Stein, who's the Democratic candidate, up by 10 points among likely voters and 11 points among registered voters. When, before the scandal, Morning Consult found Josh Stein up by 13 points. Here's one from Quinnipiac University finding him up by 10 points, and then another one by 12 points. With Morning Consult, 13 points. Survey USA, which is another very highly rated pollster, 14 points. Florida Atlantic University, 11 and 10. And this was before the scandal. So that doesn't really make much sense. Why has Mark Robinson not lost anything? I know some of the responses were also before the scandal, but it feels like he should have lost something. But this poll is right where the polling average was before the scandal. So what's up with that? Let's go over to see North Carolina in the presidential election. And here, so among registered voters, 48 for Donald Trump, 47 for Kamala Harris. And among likely voters, 49 for Donald Trump, 47 for Kamala Harris. Now, with Emerson College found 49% and 48%, 49 and 50 on a separate poll, with Kamala Harris in the lead by 1 point each time. Morning Consult found the same thing. I'm not going to talk about Victory Insights. They're not a very trustworthy poll. The same thing goes for Trafalgar and Qantas Insights. Here's another one from Quinnipiac University, finding Kamala Harris up by 3 points, a Morning Consult poll finding them tied, a Survey USA poll finding Kamala Harris up by 3 points. And then we have to go all the way down here to find a poll, besides this Tip Insights poll, that has Donald Trump ahead. Now, all of a sudden, the New York Times is finding Donald Trump ahead in North Carolina and Mark Robinson trailing by the exact same margin that he was before the scandal broke out. Let's go over to Arizona's Senate election because the New York Times poll found Ruben Gallego, who's the Democratic candidate, leading Carrie Lake by 6 points among likely voters and 9 points among registered voters. This feels like it's kind of on the mark. However, we go down here to Morning Consult. Here they found Gallego with 53, Carrie Lake with 39. Redfield and Wilton, historically more of a Republican-leaning pollster, but I'll count them. So they find +6. Insider Advantage, which is a Republican-leaning pollster, finds Gallego up by 4. Redfield and Wilton up by 5. Emerson College up by 7. Fox News up by 15. But if you pay attention here, the New York Times and Siena College found Ruben Gallego up by 9 points among both registered voters and likely voters. So here, they both lost a percent, but among likely voters in this other poll, in this other margin, Ruben Gallego stayed exactly the same, and Carrie Lake gained 2 points among the undecideds. With a candidate as unpopular as Carrie Lake, that just does not seem within reason. I know polls have a certain amount of error, but I don't think that Carrie Lake will gain 2 points in the span of a month, especially given everything that's been going on with the momentum and just the direction in which the national attitudes are going. Carrie Lake will not gain 2%. And the same thing goes for the presidential. For one, I think Arizona is going to be really close. I don't think Donald Trump is going to win Arizona by 5. I don't think Kamala Harris is going to win Arizona by 5. But here, look at what we have here. Trafalgar Group finding Donald Trump up by 1, which is a Republican-leaning pollster. Morning Consult finding Donald Trump up by 2. Tip Insights finding it tied. Emerson College finding Donald Trump up by 3 points. Bloomberg and Morning Consult finding the race tied. Fox News finding Kamala Harris up by 1 point. So this New York Times poll is an extreme outlier in the case of Arizona. Here is their last poll showing the exact opposite of what their polls showed now. And that was before the debate. That's not going to happen unless Kamala Harris did bad in the debate, which we know that didn't happen. At least that's what most people say. So a swing like this looks extremely unlikely. So what I'm going to say is this. I think that these polls, all polls really, need to be taken with a grain of salt. Of course, these polls are massive news because they find something that goes completely against what we've been seeing in terms of the momentum shift and the polling average. But because it's New York Times and Siena College, they're given a lot of extra weight, let's say, in terms of polling averages by 538, all of that, they're really taken into account a lot. So now we go over to Georgia. This one, I think, makes more sense. I don't think Georgia will go to Donald Trump by 4 points after voting for Biden in 2020, voting for Warnock in 2022, and Warnock and Ossoff in 2020 as well. But again, Emerson College, other way. Bloomberg Morning Consult, other way. Fox News, other way. New York Times, Siena College, again, they found almost the exact same margin among likely voters. Well, it is the same margin, but Donald Trump lost a point. Kamala Harris lost a point, when we know that Kamala Harris should have received a debate bump. So, what I'm trying to figure out here is which one of the two polls that they did is the one that is more off, let's say. Because, again, going back to North Carolina's governor election, Mark Robinson is probably the worst candidate to have ever been fielded by either of the major parties in a state as close as North Carolina in at least 20 years. This guy is just uniquely terrible. He's more unliked than Herschel Walker, more unliked than Dr. Oz, more unliked than Carrie Lake, more unliked than Doug Mastriano. Doug Mastriano didn't even have half the scandals that Mark Robinson had. So I'm trying to figure out why the New York Times hasn't had Mark Robinson have more of a drop in support. Maybe 36 and 37 is his floor. I don't think that that's the case. I really don't think that that's the case. I think that the American populace has more of a conscience than that. But if they don't, still, for Josh Stein to have not gained at all over Mark Robinson with the scandal is not something that is possible within the realm of normalcy. So, what does this all mean? Of course, polls are just a snapshot of the electorate, and of course, polls are prone to sampling bias and errors. We saw in 2020, they skewed heavily Democratic. They said Biden was going to win Wisconsin by 8, 9, 10 points. He won by less than 1. They said Biden was going to win Pennsylvania by 5, 6, 7 points, and he won by almost 1. In 2016, they said Hillary Clinton was going to win the election, and she didn't have to worry about the blue wall states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and then Trump won all 3. I guess what I'm trying to say is pollsters regularly update their methodology, and if they're wrong in a certain direction, they're going to try to overcompensate the other way. Polling as an industry is obviously prone to a lot of issues as the electorate changes and the population changes. So they have to figure out what demographics are going to vote and at what rate they are going to vote. I'm not a pollster. All I'm saying is these polls look weird. These polls in North Carolina and Arizona specifically, I'm not going to talk about Georgia. We have no other data points for Georgia. But for North Carolina and Arizona, for two extremely unpopular candidates to have not lost support or even gained support in the case of Carrie Lake, that doesn't really fit into what we've been seeing. So these polls need to be taken exactly as they are. They're just polls. I wouldn't think too much of it either way. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and hit subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you later today for a video on the state of Texas politics.